Hello, my name is Benjamin Newsom, coming from San Antonio, Texas, to tell you about the gospel. So let's start off with the creation that God made. God created all people, and He needed a place to place His creations, myself and you included. So when He did that, He decided to make earth, and He made a sacred place, the Garden of Eden. So when He made that garden, He needed somebody to man that garden. There was no gates around it, and it was a sacred garden. So He needed somebody to man that garden, and that person's name that He created was Adam. Well, while Adam was there, He decided that Adam needed a partner. So while Adam was asleep, He took a rib from Adam and created a person. And Adam said, "You were taken from me, you were taken from man, so I will call you woman," which we now have women as our creators and soul holders. So that's how we have males and females now. So Adam was created to man the garden that God had put here for us. And then He had Eve. So while they're creating this garden, God gave them a few specific rules. And one specific rule was to not eat from the tree of knowledge. You see, you can eat from anywhere else. You can walk around anywhere else. Do not eat from the tree of knowledge. Well, one day a serpent came down, and he went to Eve and he says, "Did God really tell you that you can't eat from the tree of knowledge? What is it He doesn't want you to know? What knowledge does He not want you to know from the tree of knowledge?" So Eve took up the apple and ate from the apple. And then she gave it to Adam. And Adam, in following, he ate it also. So when he did that, Adam and Eve actually fell into sin. And it wasn't the sin of, it was the disobedience of God and the making of their own laws. They didn't follow God's laws. They decided to make their own laws, man-made laws. So God had to punish them. And by punishing, what He did was He said, "You will be banned from my garden. You will not be able to eat from this garden anymore." And He put a gate around this garden, this sacred garden, and it was eventually blocked off, no longer being able to use by Adam and Eve. And He told Adam, "You will work the lands, and you will work the lands and grow the food that you need to eat. Eve, you will bear the greatest pain ever. You will bear children." But in doing this, He still loved Adam and Eve. He just was not happy with their disobedience of his law. He asked them not to do something, they still did it. So just like as children, when we did something and our parents asked us not to do something, they had to eventually punish us and say, "Look, I asked you not to do that, you still did it, so here's your consequence." Well, the consequence for Adam and Eve was they were banished from the garden. Adam was eventually made to make the food, grow the food from the land, and eat of the animals that He put on the earth. Then Eve decided Eve was going to bear children, which she had. I want to say she had Cain and Abel. We're getting to that though. It's getting good. So God made a series of promises called covenants, and they're referred to as covenants. Came by the promise. That was the promised kingdom He promised us. God also promised after many events, God decided that before the covenants. Let me back up a little bit. Before the covenants, sin continued to happen. God said, okay, so He decided to bring a great flood. He told Noah, "Bring 2 of each animal onto your ark." And He brought a great flood. And He basically decided He was going to wipe out the whole earth and just start all over again. After this came the covenants, a series of promises. And one of those promises was that he would never send another tragedy like this again. So in that, he showed us mercy, and he said, I'm not going to have any more floods or floods that will wipe out the earth again. He decided that he was going to leave the earth as is. But when the people decided to build the Tower of Babylon, he had to break up that tower and spread everybody out, and then give them different languages, making a communication barrier, because they were trying to, again, build a tower to the heavens, and that you're disobeying God again. It's not how it works. So again, man trying to be God, God said, okay, I'm gonna have to spread y'all out now. So that's why we have different countries, different continents, different dialects and everything else like that. But it works. It's good. It's really good. So God told Joseph, one of his promises was he would send somebody down to mend these sins that the people have caused. So he told Joseph, he said, your wife will have a son. She will bear a son for you. And he said, well, God, she's a virgin. So years and years and years and years went by, and Joseph was like, God, where's my son? What's going on here? He said, be patient, I'll give you a son. Well, again, Joseph decided, well, I'm going to make my own son. I'll do it my way. So he went and got his maid. He impregnated his maid and had a son by her. I want to say his name was Isaiah. Isaiah was not the one to crush the head of the serpent. So that didn't work out. God told him, he said, you have a son, yes, but he will not crush the head of the serpent. So years and years went by. More years and years went by. Eventually, Joseph was 100 years old. 100. And his wife bare a son. So she bare this son. When she bare this son, God told him, he said, take him to the mountain, and I want you to sacrifice him for me. So he took his son up the mountain. His son was about 120 years old. So by this time, Joseph was 120, old, elderly. Took him up the mountain, and he tied him up. His son did not fight him, and as he was about to plunge the sword or knife into his son's chest to, sacrifice for the Lord said, stop. And he looked over in the bushes, and he saw a ram, and he sacrificed that ram. God just wanted to know that Joseph would follow his every command, and he did. He followed it. So it's getting even better. So when Jesus came down, he came down in flesh and blood. He was born. And I want to say that's how Christmas came along. He was born, I want to say, they say December 25th. I'm not sure if that's correct. Don't quote me. Sorry about that. So, sorry about that. I just had a slight freeze for a second. So God's Son, Jesus, would deliver the Word of God. He would be God's main prophet, and he would cleanse the world of their sins. But he was the example that God wanted. Even though he wanted to commit sin, he did not commit sin. He did not come into temptation, and he did not commit sin. He's also considered a sacred person, so anywhere his presence was, he would be felt. So when he was felt, he'd be felt around the world. And God also had prophets that he had traveled around the world to spread his word. So when he spread his word, it gets even better. When he spread his word, when he spread the word, They would spread the word of God, and they would talk through God for him. Through him, they'd talk for him. So they'll spread the word of God like he's coming back. Please don't sin. Try not to sin because he's going to come back. So among this, when Jesus was tried by the Romans, he was crucified. This was a sign that he was crucified by the Romans, and then he was crucified by the Romans, and then 3 days later he was resurrected. It's Resurrection Day, Easter. Everybody goes to church on Easter, right? Resurrection Day. He was resurrected, brought up from the tombs, brought to God in heaven. Brought to God in heaven. So, after that was done, he was above the heavens, and he said, "For those of you that believe in me, I will help you. I will be with you. For those of you that don't, I will not be with you. I will curse you." So, for those that don't believe, he's not going to help. And now we're the covenant that he promised was Jesus before he cleansed the world of his sins. The temple he was speaking of was not necessarily a physical temple. It was Jesus. He was the temple. He was the temple. That was the castle that we were looking for. That was the person. That was the temple. That was the Israel we were looking for was in Jesus. It was not a physical thing. It was a physical being who was basically a spiritual being also. And now we're waiting for the return. We're in the kingship, and every sin we commit, God has paid for. God has paid for with his only begotten Son, Jesus. I know this video is pretty long. I appreciate this class. I hope I got my word across, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.